idea for the first book. Then second book, Global Brain. Go.
Okay, there was an idea underlying the Lucifer principle, and that is that at the time, and it's still the case, the biological and psychological sciences are dominated by something called the Neo-Darwinian synthesis. And the Neo-Darwinian synthesis is based on a rational selection model. It's based on a rational choice model. It's based on the idea that I'm out for me, and I'm only going to do what's good for me. And you're out for you, and you're only going to do what's good for you. Well, David, I would probably, if we were in a crunch, I would probably give up my life to save yours, and you would probably do the same. So obviously, for all of the evils that man does, and we are among the evildoers, there is some beneficence. In fact, there's that, what was Hitler pulling on? He wasn't pulling on selfishness. He was pulling on people's deep, profound need to be part of something bigger than themselves. The Lucifer principle and global brain explain that. And they explain it by saying that this is a world in which groups are in competition. First of all, it's a world of pecking orders. If you look at a bunch of chickens in a yard, you'll discover that one chicken has all kinds of amazing privileges. For example, she is the first chicken in line to go for food, and no other chicken dares go ahead of her. And then there's a chicken who's absolutely the last in line to get food, and that poor chicken doesn't have any feathers and looks absolutely miserable. Why doesn't that chicken at the end of the line have any feathers? Because the lead chicken, the first one who gets to go after the food, has the privilege of pecking anybody in the group that she wants. And those she pecks, in turn, peck others who are even lower than they are. And they, in turn around and peck others who are even lower than they are. And who is the one that everyone in the entire tribe of chickens, in the entire flock, feels it's perfectly justified to pick on? It's perfectly justified to peck the one at the very bottom of what was called the pecking order. And that chicken has no feathers left because everybody has pecked at her. Poor baby. Well, societies are arranged in pecking orders too. America has been very proud ever since World War I or World War II of the fact that it is number one. And our pride swelled to a toxic level in the 1990s after the fall of the Berlin Wall, because we thought that we were given the God-granted gift of being number one, and we would be number one forever. It was just our number one status was stitched into the very fabric of history. And that is never true, because chicken yards stay stable most of the time. But throw a strange chicken into the yard or produce some change in the balance of powers, and then all the chickens go at each other like crazy, and you have World War III in the chicken yard, until a new pecking order is established and a new bird comes out at number one, and she gets all the privileges: the privilege of being first in line at the food and the privilege of pecking anybody she wants. Well, the same thing happens with nations. And in both the Lucifer principle and global brain, you see that societies compete by being smarter than each other. The society with the cleverest brain, the society that can adapt the fastest, the society that can come up with the most new technologies and figure out how to market, distribute, and use them the fastest. That's the most in the most clever manner. That is the society that comes out on top. The society that can turn the greatest amount of trash into treasure, the greatest amount of garbage into gold, the greatest amount of toxic waste into a new form of fuel. That society comes out on top. And but to come out on top, you have to be smart. And how are you smart? Well, we learned a lesson from something called neural nets and Darwinian programming, in general from learning machines that we've been building with computers since the 1990s. And those learning machines, ones that we put to work periodically to solve some really big problem in industry that can't be solved by just human brains, works in a simple way. It has hundreds of thousands of what we call agents, little individuals of some kind that go bustling around in the world of the computer's mind. And those agents are allowed to get together with other agents and put together plots and schemes, and they're all pitched toward the problem of the moment. Well, there comes death within this computer program, and when death comes, when the end of these agents' life comes, only the ones whose groupings have led them toward a partial solution of the problem at hand get to reproduce in the next generation. Only they get to stay alive. And the ones that didn't succeed, that couldn't get a handle on things, that just couldn't get it, couldn't form social clusters that meant anything when it came to solving anything, those die off. Well, in other words, to the winners go the spoils. To the winners go all of the attention. To the winners go all of the influence. To the winners go all of the power. The power in a computer model of the kind I'm talking about consists of juice, literally electricity. And then the same thing works in a human society. Human societies are smart because they work by favoring the elements that work and by disfavoring, by disadvantaging, by being really cruel to the elements that don't work. I'm not saying we should ever be really cruel. We never should be. But that's the way nature has basically set things up. So if you go to take it to your junior in college and you have a real high pressure test, and you show up at that test and you've been reading forever about fight and flight responses and running across a saber-toothed tiger on the path and how it motivates you, it hypes you up so you either battle the tiger or you run away. Sorry, that's not what happens when you take that test. Your brain goes dead. You can't remember anything you've studied for the last 6 years. You're lucky if you can remember your own name and how to spell it. Well, what happened to the fight and flight response? Well, the fight and flight response isn't the totality of life. There's something called apoptosis. It's called pre-programmed cell death. A cell is built to survive, of course, and to cooperate with other cells to make things happen and solve problems. But it's also built so that if nobody wants it and it doesn't turn out to be relevant to solving the problem of the moment, its default mechanism is suicide. And it has an internal suicide program that kills it off. Well, that's your internal suicide program working right there when you're taking that goddamn mathematics test. And you see it at work when your girlfriend leaves you, and okay, do you fight and for flee? Do you get all roused and stand for yourself? And do you go to a bar and proclaim, I'm the biggest man on the block, I'll take on anyone? Or do you run around like crazy dating new girls? No, you go into a total funk. You wake up in the morning and you can't even think of what you're supposed to be doing that day, especially if it's a Saturday or a Sunday when you don't have work to save you. And you're in a fog for a long time. Now, why in the world would you be in a fog when you should be fighting or flighting? When you should be highly aroused and vigorously going about solving your problem, especially since you have a so-called survival instinct, don't you? And especially since you're supposed to be a rational agent out for your own best interest and selfish no matter what. All the economic models take the rational agent model and base themselves on the idea that you're out for your own good. No, I'm sorry. To be a part of a group smarts, to be a part of a group IQ, you have to go through a moderate form of pre-programmed cell death if you're not contributing to the system. And what does your girlfriend's leaving you tell you about yourself? Useful, highly desired, or useless? Toss him away. It tells you you're useless. And unfortunately, learning systems, learning machines are very cruel to those who are not able to build and sustain connections, and to those who are not able to build and sustain connections to subgroups that contribute to the solution of the problem of the moment. So Global Brain basically it tells you the entire story of the history of life in terms of these basic principles. It tells you how we got to be who we are today. It tells you how the cells that we're made up of evolved. It tells you stories like Lynn Margulis and Dorian Sagan's story of the great oxygen crisis. The story of the great oxygen crisis goes like this.